today we have our very first look at the potential balance changes coming next season of Clash Royale. Now, once again, this list is just a work in progress and is not final, so you have a chance to provide feedback to influence the final balance changes by leaving a comment down below of what you think of these balance changes. So with that being said, we have 10 cards on this potential balance change, 4 buffs, 5 nerfs, and 1 card rework. Starting things out here with the buff list, the first card is going to be a boost to the Prince. The Prince's charge speed will be going from 3.5 tiles to 3 tiles, allowing him to charge ever so slightly sooner, which should allow him to squeeze out a charge attack in a few more tighter situations. It's not really a huge buff, but he's already an okay card that is mostly being held back by the meta, so hopefully just a small boost is all he needs to become a bit more viable. The next card here is a buff to the Mega Knight, who, if you remember, had his spawn damage nerfed a couple of balances ago. This time they are making his jump attack slightly faster, going from 1.1 second to 0.9 seconds, which should be a very small buff to make him a bit more difficult to kite with those cheap and spammy units. Now, if you're wondering why they're even considering buffing the Mega Knight, I will show you some stats in the second half of this video to help explain why. Basically, he's never really ever been the same since that previous spawn damage nerf. However, instead of just reverting that previous change, they are considering going this direction because they believe the initial spawn damage is the more frustrating aspect of the card when players drop it at the bridge and destroy an entire push. So keeping that spawn damage lower, but hopefully boosting the jump speed, could help make him a bit more viable once again. Now, moving on, we have a buff to one of the least popular cards in the entire game, the Executioner, whose max attack range is being increased by 1 tile. Now, his actual attack range and the duration that the axe remains in the air is staying the exact same. The axe will just fly a little bit further. Now, if you remember, a few balances ago, the bowler actually received a similar change where the bowler's rock would roll 1 tile further, but the bowler still had to get to the exact same range to initiate the attack. The rock just rolled further, which was a very good change for the bowler because it now allows the bowler to clip a tower in a few specific scenarios, getting a little bit of chip damage done. So hopefully this ends up being a good change for the Executioner as well. Now, the last card getting a buff here is the Ice Golem, whose duration of the slow effect upon death is being increased by half a second. Now, this is a very small change, but currently the Ice Golem is only really ever used in 2.6 Hog Cycle, so hopefully just a very small change to make that card a bit more competitive in the mini tank class of different units. Now, moving on here to the nerf list, we have 5 cards being nerfed in this balance update, the first of which is the Golden Knight. The Golden Knight's health is being decreased by a whopping 10%, which I think is a really good change, as in my opinion, he's currently the single strongest card in the entire game. He literally does everything right now very, very well. He tanks, he deals damage, he has a ton of utility with the charge attack, often clipping towers, dealing immense damage, or even blocking things like Sparky charges as well. He's overall an extremely well-rounded unit that does well in every scenario, so hopefully this nerf prevents him from continuing to dominate the meta. Now, speaking of champions, the next card being nerfed is a nerf for the Skeleton King. The Skeleton King's ability is once again losing 2 more skeletons at full charge, which is a slight change, and I'm not too sure if it's enough to stop the Skeleton King from dominating in the meta. Next, we have a nerf for one of the most controversial cards in the entire game right now, and that is the Electro Giant. I'm fairly sure you should all be pretty happy with this change. His counter attack, zap attack, will now deal 33% less damage to crown towers. I think everyone just breathed a collective sigh of relief. This was the most controversial card in the game right now, and that was the most frustrating aspect of the card whenever it gets to a tower, dealing immense damage in a couple of seconds, now being reduced by 33% to crown towers. Overall, a pretty significant change and a pretty big hit, hopefully, to all of those toxic E-Giant rocket cycle decks. Now, the next nerf here might be a fairly controversial one, and that is a nerf to the Fireball. The Fireball's knockback range is being decreased from 1.8 tiles to 1 tiles, and the argument here is the Fireball is by far the best spell in the entire game in terms of damage and utility, so by nerfing the knockback ability of the Fireball, decreases a bit of the utility of the card and provides a much more use case to use alternative spells like Poison looking for the slow or a snowball if you want that true knockback. So I don't know, what do you all think of this change for the Fireball? It's been a pretty good card in the meta for a while now, and it might be a controversial one. Similar to how the Lock Spell nerf was not really well received at last balance update, I have a feeling the Fireball change might be controversial as well. And speaking of Fireballs, the little Fireballs with 2 little legs is the Fire Spirit, who is also getting a nerf as well. The damage of the Fire Spirit is being decreased by 9%. This will still allow the Fire Spirit to one-shot goblins. However, should provide a bit of relief for the most overpowered aspect of the Fire Spirit, which was chip damage to a tower for only 1 elixir. Very often, you had to force yourself to take a negative elixir trade against a 1 elixir Fire Spirit if you want prevented Fireball level damage to your tower. Now it is being slightly decreased by 9%. I am pretty happy with this change. I think the Fire Spirit was kind of flying under the radar for being a busted card, so seeing a 9% damage nerf is a very, very good change in my opinion. Now the last card here is a pretty significant rework for the Elixir Golem. Now this is an interesting change. Let me go ahead and read it here for you. It says each golem part will now give you elixir. The big golem gives you 1 elixir. The 2 middle golems will now each give you half of an elixir, and the 4 small blobbies will also each give you half of an elixir, for the same sum total of 4 elixir given to your opponent for the Elixir Golem. However, what this does do is it now gives the defender against the Elixir Golem access to the elixir significantly earlier. And to compensate, they are increasing the health of the Elixir Golem by 9% for the big phase and 6% for the middle phase. This is a really interesting change that I definitely welcome into the meta. The Elixir Golem has been a terrible, terrible card for an extremely long time. However, it is also a frustrating card to face because in its current state, very often by the time that you get the elixir back from all of the blobbies, either your tower is already dead or all of your defenders are already dead, so you've already taken a negative elixir trade, or they already have such a massive push that you can't even stop it anyways. So by giving the defender access to the elixir earlier on, it now gives you more counterplay potential to stop that massive push, but you also buff the health of the Elixir Golem to make it a bit easier as the E-Golem user to break through. So that is a pretty spicy potential rework. I'm definitely welcoming of it. Even if the E-Golem ends up being a bit too OP, they can always just change it again in a future balance update. I'm just happy to see some sort of change or any change at all in the meta. But that is the list of the balance changes. What do you all think? Leave your feedback down below. Once again, this is just a work in progress and these changes are not final. So you have a unique opportunity to become a Clash Royale developer and leave your feedback down below on what you think of these changes. Do you like them? Do you not like them? Or do you think they were missing a couple of different cards? So now moving on here from the official balance changes, I want to share with you my opinion on what I think of some of these changes and also a couple of the cards that I firmly believe are missing from this round of balances. So to back up what I want to say, I've pulled up the website Royale API, which gives you the actual stats and use rates and win rates for all of the cards in Clash Royale. Now, we are using the stats in Grand Challenges for the last 7 days. If you're wondering why I'm using stats from Grand Challenges, it's because Grand Challenges have an equal level playing field. Everyone has access to all of the cards, all of the champions, and all of the cards are at the exact same level. So it gives you a baseline opportunity to compare the power level of the cards. On ladder, you have players that don't have access to champions. You have players that are using level 14 Mega Knights against level 10 players. So the stats on ladder are very often skewed because players have different access to different cards. So jumping in here, let's go over a few of the controversial ones. Number 1 is the buff to the Mega Knight. I'm sure you're all wondering, Shane, why are they buffing the Mega Knight? Well, here's the thing. The Mega Knight has never been the same. Ever since they nerfed the spawn damage a couple of balances ago, it just has not been the same card. It only has a 37% win rate and a 4% usage. That is amongst some of the lowest in the entire game, right next to Ice Spirit, right next to Goblins, right next to Furnace and Archers and like Wizard and Witch. So I can definitely understand why they are considering buffing the Mega Knight. Definitely makes sense for me. In terms of other cards they buffed, Executioner's right down here definitely deserves a buff. The Elixir Golem right here definitely deserves a buff. You can make an argument that Battle Healer needs a buff too, but honestly, maybe the buff to the Elixir Golem also brings up the use rate and the win rate of the Battle Healer as well, because they tend to kind of work well in a deck together. So I believe it's a good idea to only buff one of those cards initially, and then if it needs it, they can come back later on about the Battle Healer as well. The Ice Golem as well. well, way down here, only a 44% use rate. Remember, it's just a very, very small buff for the Ice Golem. And right here is the Prince, way down at a 42% win rate, a little bit higher than the Mega Knight, but a little bit lower of a usage rate. So once again, like I said before, the Prince, in my opinion, is an overall okay card. Just kind of doesn't really do too well in the current meta. So just a very small buff for the Prince to hopefully bring him back a bit. That paired up with a couple of the different nerfs coming in the balance update should hopefully allow the Prince to be a bit more viable. Honestly, I think it might end up being a bit of a strong card. But looking at this list down here, these are some of the kind of like lesser used cards in the game. You have things like Wizard, Witch, Firecracker, Goblin Gang, Tesla. I feel like any one of these cards down here is a candidate for some more buffs. I love seeing cards getting buffed. I think nerfing a card is less fun. Very often players have invested their gold and their magic items to get a card leveled up. So it never really feels fun when a card is nerfed. Although, you know, obviously they have to nerf cards every so often when they become a problem. Things like Golden Knight and Skeleton King. But you know what? You know, go crazy with the buffs in my opinion, because it's fun. You know, if a card gets too OP, you can always just kind of rein it in and nerf it again the next balance update. But I believe like a couple of these cards down here have been pretty poor for a long time. Like Wizard, definitely can use a rework, complete just redesign top to bottom. The Goblin Gang, I feel like they should bring back the third Spear Goblin. Back in the good old days, the Goblin Gate had 6 goblins total, 3 stab goblins and 3 spears. Now it only has 5. And I believe that now is the time to bring back that third Spear Goblin to bring the Goblin Gang back into the meta. I definitely think that's one of the cards that they could have buffed as well. But moving on to the nerf list, they hit a couple of the key components. They nerfed Skeleton King, very, very dominant card. They nerfed Golden Knight, the most broken card in the game right now, in my opinion. The Electro Giant, funny enough, is way down here. Only a 46% win rate. Now, granted, it does have a 10% usage, but only a 46% win rate. That is actually fairly low. Like right now, the Royal Hogs have a similar win rate as the Electro Giant. Obviously a lower use rate, but the Royal Hogs are comparable in success to the Electro Giant. So the argument is, does the Electro Giant even need that massive of a nerf? Is the E-Giant the problem? Or is the Mirror the problem? Or is it the fact that champions allow a 3-card cycle? Is that the problem? I don't really know. I do know that the Electro Giant is more of a frustrating card to face. Like, if you lose to E-Giant, it definitely feels more frustrating than if you lose to Royal Hogs. So even looking at these stats, they don't tell the entire story. I can definitely see why the E-Giant is being toned down. Also, I feel like the meta itself has just overall adapted to E-Giant. Everyone's running Cannon Cycle. So when the entire meta shifts to counter one card, it's a pretty good indication that it might be a bit too overpowered. So we could definitely agree with that nerf for the Electro Giant. A few of the cards that I believe they missed, in my opinion, one argument could be made for the Mirror. Now, my opinion on the Mirror might be a controversial one, but I kind of like having the Mirror at +2 card level. The Mirror for the longest time was always a very, very troll card. It was never viable. It was never good. But the +2 level, in my opinion, has made it have a distinct use case. I feel like you could actually use a Mirror deck and have success with it and have it feel like a complete and competent strategy. So I don't know, maybe my opinion is a bit of a hot take here, but I think the Mirror is kind of fun having at +2 level. It's just, I don't know, it's just different in my opinion. A few of the other cards they missed here, in my opinion, number 1 is the Tombstone. I definitely think Tombstone is still too strong. I know it's kind of one of those cards that you don't really feel or see how powerful it is. Like, it doesn't really, when you go into a battle against Tombstone, you don't really think to yourself, man, this Tombstone is broken, because it doesn't really do anything to your tower. But I think looking at these stats right here, 56% win rate, 13% usage, I just think the Tombstone just offers too much value and is insanely powerful. So it could definitely use a small, I would say, spawn speed nerf of the skeletons spawning out the Tombstone. The Goblin Drill, in my opinion, was also missed. Very, very powerful card. Very, very dominant. An argument could be made that the only reason Goblin Drill was ever being used because the E-Giant, but you know what? If they nerf E-Giant, the Goblin Drill is still good. So I feel like the Goblin Drill was definitely missed as well. So Tombstone and Goblin Drill, in my opinion, were both missed. Giant Skeleton could also use a slight nerf as well. Very, very powerful card. The Zappies, similarly, could also use a very small nerf, maybe in their attack speed. And also, the last card I think that was missed is going to be the Royal Ghost. This might be the most hot take or controversial take of my opinion list here, but I firmly believe the Royal Ghost is flying under the radar for being a powerful card. For 3 elixir, offers so much value, insane pressure, even a 1 health invisible Royal Ghost gets like a shot to the tower and just destroys. So I feel like that last nerf that it received, I think it was last balance update, where it takes longer to go back invisible, I feel like it didn't really change anything. It didn't really change any interactions. So I think the Royal Ghost could use a slight nerf once again. Looking at the stats right here, 55% win rate, 12% usage. That is very, very high. Like Skeleton King was nerfed, for example, at 14% usage and 56% win rate. The Royal Ghost is very, very similar to that, and it's not even a champion. But that's all that I think they kind of missed in this balance update so far. Giant Skeleton, Zappies, Goblin Drill, Tombstone, and Royal Ghost in terms of nerfs. An argument could be made for the Mortar as well, but I don't really feel that's too oppressive right now. It is powerful in the hands of a very skilled pro player, but it just doesn't really feel too oppressive right now in the meta. Fire Spirit was nerfed as well, whopping 20% usage. But that is it, guys and girls. What do you think of this balance update? Looking at these stats right here, does anything surprise you on these stats? Do you think they missed any significant cards that should have been changed? I'm really looking forward to this E-Golem change. Hopefully it's not too toxic or not as toxic as E-Giant was, but you know, we'll kind of see how it goes. Overall, I'm pretty excited for it. I just want to see a little bit more, you know, add a few more nerfs in there, add a few more buffs, give us a really, really spicy August meta. And you know what, while you're at it, also try to release a few more non-champion cards. I feel like we haven't got a non-champion card in a very long time. The last one was the Goblin Drill, which I believe was over a year ago. I want to see some brand new non-champion cards. We all have magic items. We can use those magic items to upgrade those cards. Plus, we have the card level boost the first season that the cards are released. So, you know, give us some new cards to help shake up the meta. Otherwise, in my opinion, balance changes just end up buffing and nerfing the exact same cards over and over and over again. So, you know, bring in some new cards, in my opinion, to help shake things up without only changing the same existing cards. But that's the end of it, guys and girls. Thank you all for watching. We shall see you all in the next one.